Okay, welcome to lesson 16. So this is our coding session. Let's solve some questions about while loop. So here's the first question. It says, write a program that sums a series of positive integers. So let's do it part by part. Sums a series of positive integers. So we have sum of some numbers. So we need that empty box. Let's say t. It can be any number. And the initial value is 0 here. Entered by the user. So we have user input. So it means we have to use input function, right? And here, excluding all numbers that are greater than 100. So we have to use a condition. If that number is 100, do not add it to this box, t, right? So we have to exclude those numbers, excluding all numbers that are greater than 100. But if the number is equal to 100, no problem. But if the number is greater than 100, do not add it to the box. You can't. But if the number is less than or equal to 100, so you simply add the number to the box, right? So it says a series of integers. How many numbers, how many values? Let the user decide. Let's say 5. So we ask for the user to enter the number of values in our series and then the values, right? So let's say we have n equals int input, how many numbers, so we need the box here. Let's say t equals 0. So we have n equals 5 or any number, any positive integer. So we will have 5 iterations in this case if n is 5. So we have to count the number of iterations. So your computer doesn't know how to count. So we can use a counter variable. Let's say counter equals 0. Now what about our condition? Now we have while counter less than n. As long as this one is true, we can ask the user for a number. Now we have n, the number of values in a series, we have t, our empty box, we have counter to keep track of the number of iterations, and we have while statement. Now what is next? Now we have to ask the user for the values in the series. So I say none, we have another variable, and again input, enter a positive integer. So we have a number. So the question says if it is greater than 100, do not add the number to t. So we don't add the number to the box if it is greater than 100. So we need if none less than or equal to 100. If this is true, So we don't have any problem. We can find the sum of these numbers, which are less than 100, less than or equal to 100. So how to add the number to the box? We just write t equals t plus the user input, the number. Should I add else? It's not necessary to add any else. We don't need any else here. So if the number is greater than 100, we don't do anything. So be careful about indentation here, indentation here, indentation here. So out of the body of the while loop, we print capital T to see some of those values which are less than or equal to 100. So let's have a message here. The sum is T, right? Now let's save this one, lesson 16. Now let's run the module. So how many numbers? Let's say 5 numbers. So enter a positive integer. I say 12. So enter a positive integer. I say 100. So far we have 112. So this time we have 200. So the program should exclude this number because it is greater than 100. Now let's say 2. So we have 114. And let's say 10. So what about another number? Let's say 40. But wait, something is wrong here. So what is wrong here? We have more than 5 numbers. Why? So basically, we repeat this process without any end. This is infinite loop. We don't need infinite loop. So here, you have to add counter. Counter plus equal 1. So you have to increase the value of counter, not to have an infinite loop. Now let's run it again. So 5 numbers, enter the first number. Let's say 12, 100, 200, 2, and 10. So the sum is 124, which is correct. Now let's go to the second question. So write a program in which the user can enter any number of positive and negative integer values. So this time we don't care if it is negative or positive. That displays the number of positive values entered as well as the number of negative values. So you take a bunch of numbers from the user, some integers, and then at the end you show we have, for example, m number of positive values and n number of negative values. So we want to show number of positive values at the end and number of negative values. So we know how to count, but our computers do not know how to count. So we have to teach them how to count. So whenever it comes to counting something, some values, some inputs, we need counter variable. But here we have 2 cases. One case for positive values, one case for negative values. So we can have 2 counters. Let's say counter P for positive, counter M for minus, or let's say counter N. it's much better. So counter P, counter N. And initially, their values are 0. So how many numbers? We don't know. So we can give an option to the user so they can choose if they want to terminate or if they want to continue. So here, let's say we have that option equals y. So we need two counter. We need two counter variables. Counter P equals 0. Counter N equals 0. And then y option equals lowercase y. So this one is true for now, because it might get a different value. For example, N, letter X, which is not equal to y. So this is our while statement. Now we have to ask the user for a number, an integer. So let's say number equals, so this is our variable, and input, and here enter an integer. So here we have two cases, one case for positive integers, one case for negative integers. If number greater than or equal to 0, so let's say 0 is a positive number. So if you want to exclude 0, you simply remove the equality sign here. But for simplicity, let's keep the equality sign here. So if number greater than or equal to 0, if this is true, it means we have a positive number. So we increase the value of counter P by 1. Yes, we have the first positive number. Counter P plus equal 1. Or you can write counter P equals counter P plus 1. But here I'm using augmented assignment operator. So the number is not positive. What else we have? It's so obvious. We have a negative number, right? No need to have another else. You simply write another if. You simply write else. So counter N for negative numbers plus equal 1. Now let's go to this option here. Option equals y. So this is true. Now we want to ask the user if they want to continue or not. Option equals, no need to convert your value to any integer. So we just need string. Do you want to continue? So if the user enters y, lowercase y, so it means they want to continue. If they enter something different from lowercase y, this loop will be terminated. And outside the body of while loop, you can print counter P and counter N. Print number of positive values. We have counter P and another print function, number of negative values, counter N, right? So enter an integer. Let's say 24. Do you want to continue? Yes, I want to continue. Minus 90. Do you want to continue? Yes. Let's say 3. Do you want to continue? Yes. 56. Yes. Minus 76. Do you want to continue? Yes. And the last value, let's say 100. So before ending the while loop, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 positive values and 2 negative values. Do you want to continue? Let's say no, we don't want. So you can see we have 4 positive values and 2 negative values. So let's solve the last question. So here we want to print 100 numbers, but there is one simple rule we have to follow. So we have 10 numbers in each line. So 10 numbers, 10 numbers, 10 numbers, and 10 numbers. So how many lines do we have? We have 10 lines, 10 numbers per line, right? So what we can do here, should we take something from the user? We don't need to take something from the user. We just declare and initialize a variable, let's say 1, and then you increase the value of that variable by 1 in each iteration. So the first iteration, the second iteration. So how many iterations do we need? We need 100 iterations. So we have to repeat an action. We have to repeat a process. We have to repeat a set of instructions. So what is the action here? The action is to print a number. So the first line we have 1 up to 10, right? So we can say if we reach 10, or if the number is divisible by 10, go to the next line. So 10 is divisible by 10, 20 is divisible by 10, 30 is divisible by 10. But if we have 1, 2, 3, if we have these numbers are not divisible by 10. So no need to have a new line. So you can continue. Just have spaces here. So basically we have to use AND parameter in the print function. Let's solve the question. It seems scary, but it's so simple. So let's have counter equals 1. So while counter less than or equal to 100. So what to do? If counter mod 10 not equal to 0, so it means that number is not divisible by 10. If it is true, just print the number and have 1 or 2 spaces. Print counter, and then we have the AND parameter, 1 space, or you can have 2. But what if the number is divisible by 10? So what to do? Else you print counter. So by default, the value of AND is a new line, /n. So it means new line. So this is the default value for AND parameter. So you can omit this part. It's not necessary to have AND parameter. So of course, you have to increase the value of counter in each iteration, counter plus equal 1. So let's save. Let's run. So you can see we have 10 numbers, the first line, 10 numbers, 10 numbers, 10 numbers, and the last line, again, we have 10 numbers. So we got the same thing. But here, we need more spaces. This is just about formatting. It's not that important. So this is the output. So that was all for this lesson, our coding session. As usual, take care. And bye-bye.